So I kind of give myself a little sort of, this was done for a designer too, but we done this whole shoot with no other light but those Snoop projectors. Hence all this, see all this, the patterns in the backgrounds, and even the light on their face was done with snoots. So there's no other light, no other soft boxes, or no other beauty dishes or anything like that. That was kind of fun. But that's what I'm saying. Sometimes you just gotta like test yourself and try something a little bit different.
Love it.
I kind of like the backgrounds in these, by the way. That was
question?
just like two seamless rolls.
Yeah, no, I love that.
Yeah,
I love that, mate. Question: saturation. Do you boost much in saturation?
Not really, but yes. And how it's not. Here's a trick for you. I don't use any of the you know, there's like vibrance or saturation or all that type of thing. I don't do any of that. What I will do is, if you're people who use Lightroom, sorry, I don't really use Capture One or anything, but people who use Lightroom, you know, if you go into the saturation and luminance tab, for those familiar, where you can alter the colors. So if you want to shift red slightly or shift blue, I'll go in and tweak those. Does that make sense to everybody? So rather than just cranking up the saturation, you're targeting. So say, for example, I can go to this, just target the yellows, for example, and make them either shift the color or make them more saturated. But I'll keep it kind of subtle. But then what I will do, just to finish a picture off, do that in Lightroom, straight from the raw. And that's all I'll do. Actually, I'll not really do anything else. I'll go in and then retouch the skin, and then what I'll do to finish it off as like a last little thing is I tend to use, there's a plugin called Alien Skin, if anybody's ever used it. I like to do it because, number one, I think when you do boost the sort of the saturation, it doesn't just make it as obvious. And number two, things like what we talked about earlier, see things like putting on green, that's a much more authentic way. I think introducing green in either Photoshop or Lightroom, I don't think is particularly successful. I think it always looks a bit just like noise. Do you know what I mean? Whereas that alien skin thing tends to look more realistic. So that's my sort of workflow. It's kind of real simple, really.
Favorite lens?
I'm trying to think what the aliens think. Oh wow!
I know. It's not my
Oh yes,
problem.
it's called Alien. It's called Alien Skin Exposure. I'm on version 7, Exposure X7. So if anybody's interested, it's great software, by the way. Favorite lens? No, all of your people are going to be horrified. Do you know what I use like 98% of the time, and it never comes off my? The good old 24-70 zoom. Can't beat it with a big stick. I am so lazy when it comes to, you know what, I went through a phase a few years ago getting like a 35 prime and a 50 prime and an 85 prime. I just got fed up switching lenses all the time. I'm so lazy. So I just never take a 24-70 off my camera unless I'm doing macro work and I need to use a 5 macro. So I've got all these lenses. I have to sell them all because I don't use them. I literally, every job I do, I think it's certainly since COVID, and even probably a couple of years before COVID, I had anything that wasn't on a 24-70, unless it's close-up beauty.
And you said that
should I admit to that?
You can admit what you want.
I only use Zeiss lenses, though.
It's just me and you having a chat, as I say. What about you just said mirrorless? So what are you shooting on at present with mirrorless?
Oh, do you know what? I'm a nightmare because I've always shot Nikon. Well, since the days we moved from medium format, I've always shot Nikon, and Nikon cameras are like the last sort of really good. By the way, in all these shoots, you'll see a mixture of I still haven't completely moved over to mirrorless. I still shoot DSLR as well. I still shoot in a Nikon D850. I think that's still my favorite camera. But I have got two of the Z7 IIs, whatever the second of the Z7 was, and they're great. I think they're great anyway. But I do shoot with, usually in every shoot I usually do a mixture of that. Now here's the other thing, because over the last wee while too, I did get a couple of new sort of very high-end clients. I have also got, because I needed stuff that was probably going to be used for a billboard, etc., etc., etc. And I do own a Fuji. What's the one that's like super FX 100? The one that's 100 megapixels. You know, one of those things, the medium format cameras. So I do use one of those, though I don't really like it. So I don't use it unless I have to.
It's what eBay's for.
Not, even though that thing costs about stupid amounts of money. But
next,
the image quality is amazing. I mean, the files. Okay, so this was for a designer called Matthew somebody. I can't remember his name. So this was his section. He's very good designer here in Northern Ireland. He's getting a lot of traction. So he made this thing. He was on the BB. I can't remember what it was, but anyway, there was this collection of pictures. So he just asked me to shoot them. It was something as simple as that. There's a wee bit in conjunction with the BBC, this type of thing. So yeah, see him sort of. I mean, a lot of this. But if I'm being completely honest, this is probably my least out of all the things, my least favorite shoot, only because we really did have to shoot the garments as opposed to shoot the, me doing my own thing. But of course I do my own thing, but you've had to make sure that if you look at these pictures, there's a lot more full length, whereas that's maybe not something I would do an awful lot on. So this really about the clothes. But you try to put your own twist on it. You don't want it to make it look like an e-commerce type thing. But I kind of like this picture actually, because again, what we did here was, again, we were mixing LED lights, flashlights. We were using snoots to pick up all the wee X in the dress. So there might have been about 3 different snoots just picking up the shoulders and the bit in the middle. Then there's a separate light being the hair, and then there's maybe 2 light face. So it's a wee bit of this is one of those annoying shoots where you're flexing you're being really kind of a bit of a dick, and just because you can do it, you're doing all this, your 12 lights onto a set just to look cool. But you're not really. I'm not really cool, by the way. You know what I mean?
It's not true. He really is cool.
This is more.
Color. Talk to us about you and color, because you really use color.
Well, it's one of those things we're getting. Color to me is, do you know where color comes from, Mark? Color comes from the old days where, you know this anyway, but for the other folks who don't know, I started off not being a photographer, but being a printer in the darkroom. So, and I color. So to me, and before that I went to art school and I painted. So color to me was always like the most important thing. And then you use photography as a way to express your, do you know what I mean? So like, you picked up a camera first and then you thought, oh, should I do black and white? So color to me is the most important thing. Now, saying that, I obviously like to bring in elements of black and white, and I've been shooting a lot more black and white recently, actually, because it's something that I've never really done. But to me, color will always be king. I find it just, I find I can do a lot with color, and I think you have to understand color theory to really work with color. You have to understand the combinations between colors and what works and what doesn't work. But I just find it ultimately incredibly interesting. And maybe that's again a flaw in myself, in as much as that sometimes you see people, they can see just this wonderful tonal quality in black and white. They can actually see in tone, and they're producing these wonderful, whereas I can't. I can really, I struggle really badly with that. So sometimes you just got to do what you're good at, or what you've got an eye for, I think.
As far as you talked about the color wheel and things, and you also talked about breaking rules, and obviously in one breath you say that, you know, color and you know what works together, but there must be part of you as well that goes, no, I have to break that. Does that feel like that, or are you kind of on the discipline of the wheel?
When it comes to color, I don't think you can mess about too much color, because there's just things that just don't work no matter how much you want to make the rules. They're just not going to look good. I think that's where your eye. This is where I think color is really important, just in everyday life, because I think color is far more important than a lot of people give it. You know, you can do creative things with lighting, and people go, "Oh, that's kind of interesting." But I think if you do something really wrong in color, even if people don't quite understand why it's wrong, they'll know it's wrong. You know, I think there's something can be like terribly jarring, but not in a good way, not in a way that asks questions, in a way that just doesn't feel right, never mind look right. You know, the colors are very emotive. They bring out a lot more than just what your emotions and feelings, and you know yourself. Colors represent certain things. So I think you get the color wrong, it doesn't matter how good the photography is. I think the whole thing will just fall down. So as much as I like experimenting generally, I think, yeah, colors kind of like that's set in stone nearly.
Brilliant. Okay. So who we got left? We got Lighthouse or Jess? What are we going to end on? Do you want a Lighthouse first and then go to Jess, or Jess first and then end on the Lighthouse? It's your choice.
The only reason I threw it Lighthouse was because it's the only one that isn't in the studio, so I thought it might be an idea to show you what I do when I'm not in the studio. when I'm doing stuff outside. I don't do outside very often, but this is for another designer. All these sort of black clothes. So there was this location, and then this was first summer in 2020 as well. So it was just a great location. And with these, I did a mixture of these with using a ring flash as that previous image, and then just using natural light. Now, the thing about, again, the only thing I would say about working outdoors that I like it when you've got that. I don't like so much this. I like that pose, but I don't like so much this because it's very flat. I like working when it's midday and the harsh sun, because I think that's where you get the most interesting looks and shadows. So if you look at this picture here, you know, this was like a 12 o'clock in the middle of the day, or 1 o'clock in the middle of the day, whatever it is. So this shadow coming down here on the walls, just that midday sun being really, really harsh. That's why she's having to bring her hand up to sort of shade her face a wee bit. And then we're throwing in flash on the other side, because the other side of her face would have been just completely in shadow. But I just like that idea, because it's like working with really hard LED lights in the studio. You're working on that really, really harsh sun. So again, that's why when I'm outside, a lot of people say, "Oh God, we're shooting midday." I go, "It's midday sun. It's brilliant. Let's go out and shoot." You know what I mean? I kind of like that whole. I like that type of light. But apart from that, really, working outside. We're probably just. I tend to like just doing a mixture of stuff, especially sort of shooting wide. I mean, this is probably about 24 mil, really low down. This type of thing.
Lovely. Okay, and then the last series is Jess.
This I kind of wanted to show you this one simply because what I do as well is I do a lot of like model portfolios. So this was a very simple model portfolio. These are new faces. So this in her life before. She's just that was the first time in front of in a studio with a professional photographer. So we just kind of so it's just this is more of an exercise to show you, you get somebody new, and she's a great looking girl, but she was very nervous. She had no experience. She was very stiff. So this was more of an exercise of what you can do with somebody who isn't comfortable in front of the camera, and what you can bring out of them, and what just what you can do. So this would be a very sort of typical model portfolio type shoot. So it doesn't have to be just, I guess it's an exercise of showing what you can do with somebody who isn't a model or a model with experience.
Question through, do you use a lot of the same models because you're in Belfast, or do you fly them in?
No, you'd be surprised. Belfast has actually come on leaps and bounds. I mean, this was a local girl. I mean, no, I don't get a few girls coming up from Dublin, but Belfast is actually, I reckon, in the last 5, 6, 7 years, Belfast has been talented models. Yeah, check it out if you haven't been there. You'd be surprised, honestly. And
I
like
think
sometimes,
the standard
like,
model has
I
changed
know
so
this
much,
girl was
though, isn't it? Really. Sorry.
Yeah,
Uh,
and the other thing you have to remember, the other thing you have to remember too is like it's not like it was 20 years ago where you had to be, um, 5'11" and blonde hair, and it's not like that anymore. Being a model now is as much about what you a little bit. You need to have a wee bit of something in you and a little bit of edge or a little bit of it's a bit like anything else we talked about how trends change in photography and fashion. Trends and models have changed. If you look at it, this is why it's important to look at magazines and things like that, because if you look at all the magazines now, they're not what you would might think of as an atypical model. I mean, this girl's gorgeous. She's not tall, she's not particularly, she's not like slim, but she's just got a really, really good look, and even though she's very shy and nervous, you could tell she had a bit of edge about her too. Do you know what I mean? And it was and that's where a photographer job comes in to sort of roll that out.